Solo Leveling by Chu Gong. Chapter 68, Individual Preparation. Strange. Due to her brother's stubbornness, Jinho's older sister Jinhee was returning home alone. She carefully pulled her car over to the side of the road. The man she had walked past as she left the Ajin Guild, Hunter Jin Woo-sung. Everyone in Korea knew his face. No wonder she thought he looked familiar. A regular person would have shrugged and left it there. But Jinhee was the daughter of Chairman Yu, a man well known for never forgetting a face after just one meeting. Though she wasn't as good, she had inherited her father's talent for facial recognition. She was certain she had seen him at that exact angle where he'd brushed past her. When was that? Her eyes widened as soon as she remembered. Was it? It was at the hospital. When her father had been admitted for the eternal sleep disease, she had passed someone at the hospital entrance with a similar frame. Why hadn't she recognized Jimu back then? Though it was understandable, because she had been a little out of sorts with her father in a coma. Yeah, that was definitely him. Jinwoo had been the person she had passed that day. And right after that, Jinhee had been told that her father had come to, even though the doctors had been saying he'd never wake up again. Could it have been a mere coincidence? Goosebumps covered Jinhee's entire body, and she took out her phone to call her father. Beep, beep, beep. But she hesitated before she finished dialing. What am I doing? Why did she think Jinwoo had anything to do with her father's recovery just because he happened to be there that day? She was being delusional. She let out a sigh and wondered where her mind had gone before she started the car again. Then her phone rang. Right on cue. Mr. Secretary. Jeannie smiled at the caller ID. Her father's assistant was probably calling her about the visit to the Ajin Guild on his behalf. I see that he still can't communicate honestly with his own children. Jeannie tried not to laugh as she answered the phone. Hello? Yes, Miss Yu. This is Secretary Kim. The conversation went exactly as she had expected. Before she hung up, Jeannie took the opportunity to ask Secretary Kim something. By the way, how well does my father know Hunter-sung? Pardon? Secretary Kim sounded surprised. Why the sudden question? Although flustered by the serious tone in Secretary Kim's voice, Jeannie continued. It's nothing. It's just that I saw Hunter-sung leaving the hospital that day. So I was wondering if he had visited my father. Are you saying Hunter-sung was at the hospital on the day Chairman Yu collapsed? Yes, we passed each other in the lobby right before I got the call about my father waking up. Are you sure it wasn't someone else? Or could it have happened on a different day, perhaps? I'm sure. I was a mess at the time, so it took me a while to remember. But why do you sound a little strange? And no, it's nothing. I'll call you back later, miss. Instead of simply saying goodbye, Secretary Kim planned to call her back. Was it something I said? Jeannie cocked her head, but before she could put away her phone, it rang again. She was surprised by the caller ID on the screen. Dad's calling me personally? Calls from the one and only chairman you were rather rare. Maybe she was right. And Jinwoo had something to do with her father's recovery. Jeannie cautiously answered her phone. Dad? Beijing International Airport, the biggest and busiest airport in China, was crowded with so many people there was no room to maneuver. They were there because the Chinese hunters were scheduled to return today from helping Korea. Like in many other countries, the top Chinese hunters were practically celebrities chased by mobs of fans everywhere they went. The most popular among them by far was Jigang Liu, leader of the Korean support team and a 7-star ranked hunter. One of the journalists reporting on the scene spotted Jigang. Oh, there's Hunter Liu. Ah! Jigang's fans screamed, as he held his two trademark swords in one hand and waved at them with the other. Eek! Ji Gang may have been a middle-aged man, but his solemn demeanor appealed to young women. A special task force of hunters followed him. Ah! At the sight of hunters they usually saw only on TV, the fans' passionate screams filled the airport. The reporter addressed the camera. The hunters, the pride and joy of our nation, have returned from Korea. The cheeriness on her face reflected how China felt about the successful mission. Because the elite Chinese hunters had bravely offered to help with the monolithic gate in the sky over Seoul, the country would be able to boast that they didn't turn their back on their neighbors in their time of need. Additionally, none of the hunters had gotten hurt thanks to the way events had unfolded. This was truly the best-case scenario for them. Ji Gang had convinced the best hunters in China to help him form this team, and many Chinese people applauded him for it. However, there were also many who criticized him and Korea online. The government dumped loads of cash on Ji Gang Lu to protect China. So why is he running off to Korea? Anyone know where Lu's ancestors are from? Someone check Lu's bank account to see if the Koreans paid him off. Why does a great country like ours need to help some small, ungrateful hunk of land? Never again. Here. Our hunters didn't even have to go, but since they went anyway, they should have been paid. For a group with that net worth to do charity work, calculate each hunter's daily fee and invoice Korea. Since Jin Woo-sung supposedly made so much money from the giant incident, make him pay for it. As the toxic commentary scrawled across the bottom of the screen, the reporter interviewed Ji Gang live on air. Many people have applauded your brave decision, Hunter Lu. On the other hand, quite a lot of other people are criticizing your decision to help South Korea. What do you have to say to them? Ji Gang took off his sunglasses and glared at the reporter. What idiot is saying things like that? I beg your pardon? The reporter looked like a deer caught in headlights. Ji Gang angrily continued. Are their brains just for decoration, or do they really not know how to read a map? Do they seriously not know what country is just a little ways north from South Korea? Oh, if you recall, a giant-type magic beast from Japan crossed the ocean and almost reached Chinese soil. I'm guessing you've seen that footage at least once, since I've been told it broke all the viewer rating records. Ji Gang glared directly into the camera. The same thing could have happened on an even bigger scale this time. My colleagues and I were of the same mind and wanted to prevent that. The harsh online criticisms promptly stopped. Ji Gang leveled his gaze at the camera and raised his voice to directly address his critics. Tell all these damn people talking nonsense that I, Ji Gang Lu, went to Korea to help Hunter Sung because I didn't think I could prevent any disaster that he couldn't handle. Anyone out there who has a problem with that can go hunt magic beasts on there. Ji Gang's heated comments were making his supporters very happy, but he abruptly stopped. It wasn't that he suddenly realized he was live on air. Ji Gang was just about the only person in China who could get away with such antics on TV. He stopped talking because of something he'd spotted outside the airport. What could he be looking at? The reporter was the first to follow his gaze. Then the other hunters behind Ji Gang, the staff assisting the hunters, and eventually the civilians in the airport. Everyone stared outside with shock on their faces. Hardly anything fazed Ji Gang, but even he let out a low gasp. Oh my God! Darkness was slowly blanketing the sky over Beijing. Hunter Sung, have you heard the news? Jin Woo shook his head. He had been in Japan since the raid of the monolithic gate and headed straight to the Hunters Association when he returned to Korea. He hadn't had a chance to check the news just yet. Besides, Jinho would have told him if any problems had occurred while he was away. Seeing the grim looks on everyone's faces caught Jin Woo off guard. What's going on? Jinchul took out his cell phone and showed Jinwoo several videos that had gone viral. Damn! Do you see that? Whoa! It looks bigger than the gate that appeared in Korea, doesn't it? 8 extremely large gates had appeared in the sky in various places around the world. People were simultaneously scared and awed by the phenomenon and were sharing videos on social media. Jinwoo coolly watched the videos as Jinchul audibly swallowed. Hunter-sung, could these also be? They're not! Jinwoo quickly cut him off, making it clear that he had nothing to do with these gates. Jinchul had hoped that these, too, would pose no threat, but his expression darkened as his hopes were dashed. What if hundreds of thousands of magic beasts came out of each gate like they had oversoul? Would that signal the end of humanity? Jinchul shuddered at the thought. After watching all the clips, Jinwoo spoke to him. Let's go somewhere private. Right. The two men quickly went up to the president's office and sat down on couches facing each other. You said you had something to tell me, Jinchul asked carefully. Jinwoo posed a question in response. Do you trust me, President Wu? Jinchul nodded. Yes, I do. Then please believe everything I'm about to show you. Excuse me? Jinwoo touched his index finger to Jinchul's forehead, just like the previous Shadow Monarch had done to him. At that precise moment, darkness clouded Jinchul's vision, followed by a barrage of images. Oh! Jinwoo shared only what he thought Jinchul needed to know: the ruler's plan, the monarchs, and their encroaching armies. Huff, huff, huff! Jinchul was shown the power of the monarchs. He panted heavily as soon as the images stopped. This is insane! How could this be? All this time, Jinchul had believed that God had gifted special powers to a small number of individuals in order to defend humanity, which was why they did so. But if what Jinwoo had shown him was true, he had been too arrogant. Everything he'd believed was wrong. Awakened beings were merely the results of the process of transforming humans, so that they could survive a coming war. And it wasn't a war between humans and the monarchs, but the monarchs versus the rulers. However, a human had become an unexpected variable and inserted himself into the war. Since the armies of the monarchs had arrived much earlier than expected, that variable was the last hope for humankind. No way! Jinchul's hands trembled as he looked up with teary eyes. Hunter-sung, are you actually planning to fight them? By yourself? Jinwoo wasn't about to give up before the battle had even begun just because the enemy was strong. That wasn't how he'd lived his life up until now. And so he wordlessly nodded. Yes! Jinchul wanted to help Jinwoo in any way he could. Then how can we... No, how can I help you? Jinwoo had expected this question, so he knew exactly what to say. Please call a meeting of the leaders of the world. David Brannon, the director of the Hunter Command Center, was frustrated out of his wits. What did the Hunters Association of Korea say? No official word yet, sir. Then what are you doing here? Excuse me? The director hadn't called this subordinate up to his office to stand there and blink at him. Brannon blew up at him. Give me an answer, even if you have to squeeze it out of the president of the association. Do your job. Sorry, sir. Figure out what's going on, now. The director continued to huff and puff even after kicking out the head of his intelligence department. An extremely large gate, even bigger than the one in Seoul, had appeared in the sky over Canada. The United States and Canada were allies, and they shared a border. It wouldn't take long for a fire that started in Canada to reach the United States. The best result would be for this gate to turn out harmless, like the one in Seoul. It would be great if more of Hunter-sung's magic fell out of the gate. But the problem is, Jinwoo and the Hunters Association of Korea were the only ones who knew what was going on, but they were keeping silent. It had been 3 hours since the new set of gates had appeared all over the world. The United States government was already pressing the Hunter Command Center for a plan. Our Hunter Command Center is one of the best intelligence organizations in the United States. Yet here we are, waiting on the Hunters Association of Korea. David had never been in such a situation before. He couldn't help his anxiety. Beep. As he took deep breaths, Brannon spotted the blinking light of an incoming call on his office phone and picked up the receiver. "What?" "The president is asking for you, Mr. Brannon." "Tell him I'm not in." "And Mr. Brannon?" Clack. The director slammed the receiver down. As he stared at the ceiling in a daze, the chief of intelligence returned, out of breath. "Mr. Brannon, why did you come crawling back?" The director was about to chuck the phone at the man, but the chief of intelligence quickly raised his hand. The Hunters Association of Korea has replied." A smile blossomed on David's face. "See? There you go." He put down the phone and approached the other man. "So what did they say?" "Well, the thing is, they said if we want any information about the massive gates, we need to go to Korea." Both men stared unblinkingly at each other until David snapped back to his senses. Who did they ask for?" "They said any government-appointed representative was fine." At that moment, beep, the light on his phone turned back on. "Mr. Brannon, the president said if you keep avoiding his call..." Click. Brannon hurriedly hung up the phone and spoke determinedly. "Tell them I'm going." "Pardon me?" The director exaggerated each word to make sure the confused chief understood him. "I will go to Korea. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk." Representatives from the countries who had received the call from the Hunters Association of Korea boarded their planes. It was a great reversal. A mere 2 years earlier, a South Korean S-rank hunter had defected to the United States due to the subpar reputation of South Korea's hunters. But now they were calling over the leaders of the world. Even as recently as a year ago, Japan had sneered at Korea for being incapable of handling the Jeju Island dungeon break. Then a single hunter, who surpassed such labels as elite, the epitome, and the apex, had changed everything. This man had tamed the magic beasts that poured out from the monolithic gate, so he might be the one who could explain the existence of the gates dotting the skies around the world. And hopefully, that would put what he had been through in the past few days into perspective. The key to everything was in this man's hand. The problem was that the man was too powerful to take the keys by force or persuasion. Even if one of the national-level hunters managed to knock him out by going at full strength, he had 100,000 minions behind him now. It was an impossible task. For this reason, presidents, prime ministers, premiers, and directors of hunter organizations responded to his summons. "Have you heard from any more attendees?" "No, sir." "So far, 152 countries have checked in since this morning." "Got it." Inside the emergency response room that had been established for the raid of the monolithic gate, President Wu was overseeing each step of the process. "The Hungarian representative has just arrived at the airport." "Who is the Hungarian representative?" "Einar Yadeshi, the Hungarian president." "Oh boy." When a VIP from a country visited, the protocol called for a reception fitting of their title. However, the Hunters Association didn't have the bandwidth for pomp and circumstance at this time. For a brief moment, there was regret on President Wu's expression. "Please escort him to his hotel." "Yes, sir." Jinchul sensed the man hesitating to leave, so he looked up from the document he was reading. Is there anything else?" Oh, the employee built up his courage. Sir, if I may ask, what did Hunter Sung say to you yesterday in your office? I've never seen your face that pale. In fact, before seeing Jinchul yesterday, he hadn't realized a person's face could get that pale. Just what had they talked about in his office? The employee hadn't been able to shake Jinchul's face from his mind all night, so he risked being rude and getting in trouble for prying. Sure enough, Jinchul's face hardened like stone. I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have asked. No, I'm not upset at your question. Jinchul was recalling the images that had come from Jinwoo's finger. The army of wild dragons coming out of the darkness, and the humongous dragon flying right behind them. It was so big that it looked like it was flying in slow motion. That monster was so mighty that even the combined force of all the hunters from around the world wouldn't inflict so much as a scratch on it. It could burn down everything across the land with one breath. Jinchul hadn't been able to process the sight at first. Regardless of his own power or what rewards he was offered, he didn't have the confidence to take on such a creature. I couldn't do it. Jinchul had the utmost respect for Jinwoo not running away after discovering the dragon's existence. Speaking of Hunter Sung, I wonder what he's doing now. There was still some time left before all the representatives from the different countries would finish gathering. Jinchul was suddenly curious about how Jinwoo was spending his time. He asked his subordinate before they left. By the way, where is Hunter Sung now? I believe he's at home resting. Ta-da! Jaina's face brightened as Jinwoo served her the kimchi stew he had made. Wow! It looks so good! Meanwhile, Kyunghai felt guilty for letting her busy son cook. I could have made it for you, Jinwoo replied with a smile. I wanted to show you the expert cooking skills that I've been honing. He had finally managed to persuade his mom to surrender the kitchen to him. Jinwoo pestered his mom to taste his masterpiece. She picked up her spoon with a smile on her face. Huh? She carefully blew on the stew before having a taste. Her eyes widened in surprise. Jaina poked her for her thoughts. So how is it, Mom? It's good, isn't it? It is. Jinwoo grinned at his shocked mother. Who knew Jinwoo could cook, right? Try this too, Mom. His perfectly seasoned side dishes. Jaina sang her brother's praises with a grain of rice stuck on her lip. But as the look on Kyunghai's face slowly began to change, Jinwoo turned to her. Mom? Kyunghai quietly put down her spoon. Jinwoo, is something the matter? Jinwoo tried his best to keep a straight face. What are you talking about? Your father used to cook for me like this before he went on a dangerous mission. Jinwoo hadn't cooked for her before he went to Japan to defeat those giants, or when the huge gate opened in Seoul, but he was now. Kyunghai couldn't help but worry, as a mother's intuition was always correct. I guess I am my father's son. I can't believe I'm doing the same thing he did. Jinwoo internally shook his head before he answered his mother. Nothing's the matter, Mom. Kyunghai picked up her spoon again and smiled back. It was hard to tell whether it was because she actually believed her son or because she didn't want to pry at his strange smile. Jaina held her spoon in her mouth as she observed the exchange between her mother and brother. She joined in the laughter as she went back to eating. Toward the end of their meal, Jinwoo heard Bellion's voice in his head. My lord, I have prepared the soldiers as you have commanded. Got it. Baru continued as if he had been waiting for Bellion to finish. My king, accommodations for you have been prepared as well. I see. Thank you. Jinwoo hadn't really asked for that, though. At any rate, he slowly rose from his chair following their report. I'm done eating. As he began to put the dishes away, Jinwoo's hands froze when he heard a noise coming from outside. Sounds like 4 sets of footsteps. He could hear their hearts racing. Although it didn't matter to Jin Woo, he could tell that all four were ordinary people and not hunters. What's up with them? No thief would be crazy enough to try and rob the home of an S-rank hunter. And with surveillance team members assigned by President Wu guarding the lobby, no reporters could enter the building. Jin Woo was puzzled when the doorbell rang. Ding dong. Let me answer it. He stopped his mother from getting up and went to the door. Kerchak. Jin Woo opened the door to reveal three well-built young men in black. They don't look like they're from the Hunter Command Center. Jin Woo eyed their outfits. What brings you here? The three young men stepped aside for an older man. Hunter Sung, my apologies for the unannounced visit, but may we please talk? Jin Woo's voice went up in surprise. Chairman Yu? The chairman looked a bit of a mess. Whatever he wanted to talk about was not to be discussed here. Jin Woo thought about his mother and sister as he glanced toward the kitchen table. He then turned back to Chairman Yu. Chairman Yu anxiously awaited Jin Woo's response. Jin Woo debated it for a bit before he answered. As long as it's somewhere private. The chairman's face lit up. Then I will escort you somewhere quiet. Please come with me. Jin Woo went back inside to inform his mother and grab a jacket. He then followed Chairman Yu and his men to the lobby of the building. As expected, reporters were camped just outside the entrance. It was possible the chairman had brought along the three bodyguards in order to get through the crowd. The reporters yelled as they aggressively wrestled with the hunters of the surveillance team. Come on! You let the chairman of Eugene Construction in, but not us. That makes no sense. You said Chairman Yu was a guest of Hunter Sung's? Then why can't we be his guests? Fine, we're his guests. Are you happy now? Oh, sure. The biggest sponsor of the association is fine, but no journalists. The reporters pushed so hard that they would have trampled the people in their way had they not been hunters. Please step aside. The surveillance team was starting to seem overwhelmed by the reporters. Hunter Sung has said no interviews. I said, step aside. You need permission from the association to see Hunter Sung. Unable to use their powers against ordinary citizens, the surveillance team struggled to keep the reporters in line. Feeling bad for them, Jin Woo decided to take matters into his own hands. Huh? What? The reporters found themselves suddenly floating in the air. Help! This time, Jin Woo lifted the reporters 10 meters up in the air. As he exited the building, he was enthusiastically greeted by the hunters. Hunter Sung, sir! Hunter Sung! Used to his tactics, the hunters weren't all that surprised by the situation. On the other hand, Chairman Yu and his three bodyguards couldn't believe their eyes. Oh my goodness! Chairman Yu stared at the reporters struggling in midair. For the first time ever, he felt bad for the members of the press as their faces grew pale. The person in charge approached Jin Woo. Although he looked troubled, he couldn't help his smile. Hunter Sung, we'll get in trouble if you keep doing this. They were growing too loud for me to ignore. Ha ha! Contained in a tent of magic power, no one could hear the reporters screaming. The person in charge glanced up at them. So how long are you going to leave them up there this time? I was thinking of giving them 5 minutes to settle down. The hunters of the surveillance team guffawed at the new record. Ha ha ha. Hush, hush. The hunter in charge muffled his own laugh and tried to keep his subordinates in check. He turned to Jin Woo and made a polite request. Please just make sure no one gets hurt. You don't need to worry about that. Jin Woo had mastered ruler's authority, a skill involving the manipulation of mana just like moving an object in his own hands, quite some time ago. Even if he left the area, the mana would safely lower the reporters to the ground. I can't help their nausea, though. Jinwoo figured this was fair warning, considering the ruckus they were causing in front of his home. Chairman Yu's sedan pulled up to the curb, and Jinwoo and Chairman Yu got in the back seat. The car glided away from the apartment building and headed toward Chairman Yu's mansion. There was no place quieter than Chairman Yu's drawing room. The chairman guided Jinwoo into the room, and the two men sat down facing each other. "I would like to talk to Hunter Sung privately." "Yes, sit." As soon as Chairman Yu's bodyguards left, Jinwoo spoke. "So how did you know?" Jinwoo hadn't left any evidence that he'd helped him. How had he found out? Jinwoo listened with interest as the chairman explained. "My daughter saw you leaving the hospital that day." Chairman Yu's daughter. Jinwoo remembered running into Jinho's older sister just outside of the guild office. No wonder he had thought that she looked familiar. It hadn't clicked that she was the same person he had run into in front of the hospital. Despite the steps he'd taken to keep things secret, he'd been found out thanks to a tiny coincidence. He couldn't help but laugh to himself. Chairman Yu had been keeping an eye on Jinwoo's reaction. He was now able to relax. What a relief. Jinwoo might have done what he did for Chairman Yu out of the kindness of his heart. But Chairman Yu was still worried that Jinwoo might be upset at his secret being revealed. Had Jinwoo been mad about it, Chairman Yu wouldn't have been able to look his savior in the eye. Thankfully, Jinwoo didn't seem too bothered. "So it really was you, Hunter Sung?" "It was." Jinwoo didn't bother denying it. The confirmation came as a shock to the chairman. Countless people had curried favor with Chairman Yu for personal gain, sometimes without even trying to do an equal favor for the chairman in return. But that wasn't the case with the young man sitting in front of him. He had saved a life, and not just any life, but the life of the man who ran the largest corporation in Korea. Yet he didn't want anything in return. If his daughter hadn't seen Jinwoo's face and merely walked by him, Chairman Yu would have lived the rest of his life without knowing how he had recovered from his illness. The man known for his poker face was now overcome with emotion. "But why?" He tamped down his feelings and did his best to continue. "Why did you help me?" Chairman Yu had previously asked Jinwoo for help and even offered the hunter a huge amount of money, but Jinwoo had declined, saying he didn't have the power to help the chairman. So what had changed his mind? This was what Chairman Yu really wanted to know. Ba dump, be a dump, be a dump. Each second felt like 10 minutes to him as he awaited an answer from Jinwoo. "Because I concluded that you were a trustworthy person." The completely unexpected answer caught Chairman Yu off guard. "What do you mean? If you were the type of person who would do anything to get what you wanted, I wouldn't have put myself in a tricky situation for you." "You mean because I didn't try to use Jinho?" "Yes." Jinwoo nodded. As expected of the head of a global company, Chairman Yu immediately understood what Jinwoo was getting at. Chairman Yu had held a trump card he could have used on Jinwoo, and that was none other than Jinho Yu, his son, and the vice president of the Ajin Guild. However, instead of resorting to dirty tricks, he had trusted that Jinwoo really didn't have the power. Jinwoo believed in an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, so he had repaid Chairman Yu's trust in him with his own trust, even if it had taken some time for him to reach that conclusion. "I made the right call." Jinwoo smiled. At the same time, tears fell from Chairman Yu's eyes. "I don't know how to express my gratitude to you." He wiped away his tears, and then made a serious face. "Please let me pay you back even half, no, a quarter of what I've received. Please let me do this." Chairman Yu felt indebted to the man in front of him. "By any chance, is there anything you want?" "There's nothing I want. Just..." Chairman Yu was all ears. If Jinwoo wanted money, Chairman Yu would give him money. If Jinwoo wanted something else, Chairman Yu would use everything in his power to get it. But Jinwoo's request was a little different from what Chairman Yu was expecting. "If anything was to happen to me, would you please take care of my mother and sister?" Jinwoo said after a bit of hesitation. Jinwoo wanted Chairman Yu to take care of his family if the worst-case scenario ever occurred. Jinwoo had saved up a lot of money, but money couldn't buy peace of mind. Chairman Yu would be his family's safety net. "Is that really all you want, Hunter Sung?" "That's plenty." Chairman Yu couldn't imagine anything ever happening to Jinwoo, but he nodded at once. "I will promise you that." Their long conversation had come to an end. "Well then." As Jinwoo made to get up from his seat, Chairman Yu was a little disappointed that their meeting was over. He'd realized just how much he liked this young man. If Jinwoo could somehow become part of his family. It had never crossed his mind that he'd use his beloved daughter as a lure for an arranged marriage, but he couldn't resist asking Jinwoo. "Incidentally, are you seeing anyone right now?" Chairman Yu would be happy to offer Jinhee's hand in marriage to Jinwoo. He was just that special. But Jinwoo grinned. "There is someone I like." "Oh." Chairman Yu flushed red as he realized how embarrassing his question was. But Chairman Yu wasn't the type of person to obsess over something he couldn't have, so he lifted his head up high and laughed as he said goodbye to Jinwoo. "I hope I won't need to fulfill my promise anytime soon." Jinwoo rose from his seat with a smile. "I'll do my best not to let that happen." Since all of Jinwoo's stats were maxed out, the only thing he could improve was the ability to command his army. He returned to the restricted area in Japan to train. The vast sea of trees devoid of any other humans lay in front of him. Upon Jinwoo's command, Grand Marshal Bellion divided the entire army into 3 groups to be led by himself, Igris, and Baru. Jinwoo nodded as he surveyed the 3 units from the top of a hill. Based on the energy signatures coming from the soldiers, it looked like Bellion had paid strict attention to the division of power among the 3 groups. Bellion bowed when he made eye contact with Jinwoo. He seemed to be a perfectionist just like Igris. On the other hand, is he kidding me? Jinwoo turned to look at the small shelter at the top of the hill. "Baru, get your ass over here." Zoom. Baru ran over in a split second and dropped to his knees next to Jinwoo. "My king! Assume the position." Baru slammed his head on the ground even before Jinwoo had finished his sentence. Jinwoo exclaimed, "This is what you consider small? Never mind its size. How is this a shelter?" "Scree," Baru pouted. "This is the least you deserve as our king." Jinwoo brought his palm to his face. He had forgotten that ants were builders. Considering the sizes of their homes relative to the sizes of their bodies, he should have expected something like this. Jinwoo looked up and was overwhelmed by the grandness of the so-called small shelter. A huge white stone castle that stretched the length of the area had been constructed. It was so tall that Jinwoo had to crane his neck to look up at it. Jinwoo rubbed his temples and sighed. That black flag flapping at the top of the castle. What were you thinking? Bellion quickly moved next to Baru and also assumed the position. Boom! Jinwoo was at a loss for words as he simply stared at the 2 marshals. He eventually turned around toward the other soldiers. Okay, let's just begin the drill, everyone. The thunderous cry of the shadow soldiers shook the ground. Well,